Hi there guys, what's going on? My name is Jelly Joe and today I'm back with another Rome 2 Total War Online battle. Now this time we did a 2v2 and it turned out to be an absolutely awesome battle. Now I was playing with one of my friends, Ruben, with the faction Macedon. We were both Macedon for this faction I've never really played online as, actually. I don't think ever. So this was actually my first time and it turned out to be an awesome battle. But speeding through the first about 5 minutes, first 15 minutes of this, but it's we'll speed through it in about 5 minutes while I explain some background, etc, etc to this battle. So we decided that we'd try a bigger scale battle than usual on here on my channel. Usually we do 1v1s and that's all good, but I wanted to do something a little bit more broad, so we decided to go for a 2v2 battle. So playing as Macedon. Never really played as Macedon too much before, and I thought that we would have a very simple unit setup. Now, I always do the unit setups, and this is probably one of the easiest unit setups I've ever actually gone for. Simple but effective in many ways. Now with Macedon, they have they have a wide range of troops, but a lot of them just fall short, really, of opposition troops, especially when we're facing against Sparta and Averni. Now, my friend that was playing Averni was definitely in it for the Oathsworn. He pretty much spammed Oathsworn, and he knew the Oathsworn were really effective. They probably are the best melee unit in the game. They can tear through Praetorian guards quite easily if in the right situations, and they really are quite a formidable enemy. So not the type of unit I really wanted to go up against. But alas, we went as Macedon anyway. And the reason we went as Macedon is for the simple fact of the Peltasts which they have. Now the Peltasts actually have some quite shockingly good units actually that we found out. And we didn't know about them. They're a unit that's not used too much, and when you actually see them in battle, which is my 6 groups of them, that's my whole melee force actually just consisted of them, and so did my friend's unit. Well, sorry, melee force as well, just consisted of Peltasts, and they were really effective. So we had 6 groups of Peltasts there. We had 4 groups of mercenary Cretan archers, which are, in my opinion, and stats-wise, the best in the game. They have 150 range, which means they're probably the longest ranged unit in the game, along with the Syrian archers, etc. And they have 32 damage per shot, so they offer a much more damage than any other archer, including the Syrian heavy archers that Rome has on their side. Although they have the same range, they only have 27 or 29 damage. So the mercenary Cretan archers do, statistics-wise, have the best, in my opinion, stats on the game for any archer group. So being a Mediterranean faction such as Macedon that was able to have the mercenary Cretan archers was definitely a huge bonus in this game, and you'll see why as we go through the battle. So here as my opponent, we have, we'll go with my friend's army setup first. He had the same as me, but 5 groups of Peltasts, 4 groups of mercenary Cretan archers, the same as me, and then had 4 groups of Atlas melee cavalry. I forgot to mention mine actually, this is a bit of a fail. I had 3 groups, as you'll be able to see in the bottom, and my general unit, which was shot cavalry. And he pretty much went for the same setup as me, apart from with an extra shot cavalry, but 3 Atlas melee cavalry as well. So our cavalry front was really quite strong because the Atlas cavalry were actually really good, and the Averni let him down, well, the units that let him down, should I say, are his heavy horse. He had heavy horse and didn't take nobles, and this gave us a distinct advantage in the battle because my cavalry force could quite easily overwhelm the Avernis. And as at this point in time I couldn't see that he actually had any ranged units with his units at all, I just thought he had Oathsworn span. So that gave me a distinct advantage as well, because I had the ranged and the cavalry supremacy, and the Spartans as well. My friend was doing a good job at mucking up his formation and generally causing a bit of havoc there and there. So things were looking quite positive during this, and when I actually zoomed down to look at the landscape from that angle, I found out we were actually on a small hill. Now, no matter how small the hill is in a Rome Total War game, it's always very useful for charge bonus. So I was experimenting here with shield walls, as you can see, and I just thought it would be better off to not have them in a shield wall, because I want to use that slight hill advantage as much as possible to get a downhill charge, because that increases slightly the charge bonus and generally makes them a bit more effective in battle to begin with. So here was a bit of a skirmisher type of moment in the battle. We had this whole moment here of us moving our Cretan archers forward, trying to take pot shots that the units which we thought were the most dangerous to our armies, and that was the Spartan phalanx, and any shots we could get on the Averni Oathsworn were shots that we would take, definitely. So that's kind of the plan we had. We'd use the archers to whittle down the main units that really did scare us. Now, one thing we found about Sparta is that the Spartan units that had taken, he took 2 citizen cavalry, 4 groups of Spartan pikemen, 4 groups of Royal Spartans, and 1 or 2 groups of Heroes of Sparta, along with 3 groups of Helot archers. And the Helot archers were outranged by our archers and generally had a lot lower armour and a lot lower damage per shot, so we did have a distinct advantage over his archers as well. So at this point in time, the ranged advantage was the best thing on our side. So as you can see here, we tried to use that to our advantage, but as we moved our archers forward, he moved his phalanx back. He knew what we were trying to do, and he knew that his strongest unit to use against us at this moment in time would be his phalanx. And that's for the simple fact that the Peltasts had a lot better stats than any of the Spartan infantry that were there on the field. So in a sword to sword environment, or a spear to sword, or whatever, the Peltasts would absolutely rip to shreds the Spartans, and he knew that as well as we did. So we were trying to use ranged units to whittle down the only units which he had that could actually cause us some damage. So this is pretty much where we were at the moment in the battle, and we were, kind of trying to get some pot shots off, but we didn't want to waste our ammunition on unvital units, because although the Cretans are amazing, there was no point of us using all this ammunition on units such as the Royal Spartans or Heroes of Sparta to get rid of as many of them as possible, when really the main units we were looking to get rid of were actually the phalanx, because then we'd have no ammo left when he did advance the phalanx. So we're trying to play it clever here, but watching out for the Averni. Now I thought if anyone was going to attack during this battle first, it would definitely be the Averni, and that's for the simple fact that the barbarian tribes are much better utilised when you use them in a very offensive way. So I knew that the Oathsworn are a very offensive unit, have a good charge bonus, and generally like to tear infantry to pieces, so I thought if anyone's going to attack, it's going to have to be the Oathsworn. Or, he advanced them slowly forward, and he tried to kind of intimidate me with his cavalry force there on the left hand side, but my cavalry force really did outmatch his, and that really showed later on in the battle of what happens. But you'd be surprised, because even though the Peltasts generally have really good stats, I think they had like 63 weapon damage, etc, etc, the Oathsworn in the battle a bit later on, you'll see actually do still tear through them, and I was in danger. And this battle was one of those battles, guys, it was very forward and backwards. At one moment we were winning and we had the advantage, the next moment it was they were having the advantage and we thought, oh god, we're going to lose it all. Next minute we have the advantage again. So it was a very back and forth type of battle, which is the type of battle I really enjoy, because it really makes things very entertaining in my certain opinion. So this is where things started to get a little bit more interesting. We had Levro trying to make a move with his soldiers, and the Averni were becoming a little bit more proactive as well. Now, the only hope that the Averni had at this point was to use their cavalry force as effectively as possible against mine to try and whittle that down, because cavalry against Oathsworn, if used correctly, can absolutely tear through them, and he knew that. But this is where the engagement starts, regardless. He charges his heavy horse straight up my soldiers there. My cav have the distinct advantage. However, one very large negative is the spear infantry coming up behind. Now, the chances of a horseman battle especially being over in that period of time are very slim, and his spearmen do get the catch on my cavalry, which means I do lose quite a few cavalry. At this point I was trying to back them up with some Cretan archers, while keeping Cretan archers back to the right hand side to help defend against what I had newly just found is his longbow hunters, and they were a shock to me, then they disappeared again as soon as I started shooting at my soldiers and killed a few Cretan archers. He did have ranged units, although they were outranged, outdamaged, so they weren't that big of a threat to me personally, in my opinion. But at this point, we were winning the cavalry battle behind just their 1 versus 1, because my cavalry were generally a lot better than his. But as it came to generally the spear infantry being in there, it did appear that the spear infantry were wrecking my cavalry ripping them to smithereens. So I decided to pull my cavalry out of there as fastly and swiftly as possible, and try and engage here with the Oathsworn to stop them from getting too much of a charge bonus, because although the charge bonus wasn't great for my Peltast, it was something at least against the Oathsworn. As you can see there, that 1 versus 1 cavalry battle which I was engaged in did actually go pretty goddamn well. I managed to just take out his cavalry group entirely by the time that the spear infantry tried to engage them. So we managed to run away and regroup my cavalry forces as much as possible, which was good. It means that I still had some advantage over him, although they were injured and I'd lost on 2 groups over half of the men. I still had an advantage there to use them if I so needed. Now at this point here, I went to the battle with the Oathsworn. I thought, okay, let's see how it's going. It should be, roughly even with how things are going. and I was very wrong. In fact, it seemed to me that he was actually ripping my men to pieces. Well, so the game told me, and that was a big problem. So I thought, I'm going to have to do something, otherwise my whole entire line is just going to fall, and it's all just going to be pointless. And as you can see, he was getting the flanking manoeuvre on there with another group of Oathsworn, and I was trying to keep my mercenary Cretan archers out the way. At this moment in time, let's go over to my ally though. Ally was doing very well at this point. He was, giving the Spartans a good run for their money, and in the process he managed to obliterate pretty much every single unit of Spartan phalanx, which was the main area of concern, and that was the main area of which he wanted to try and wipe out. But as you can see, I'm trying to move my cavalry around the flank here while being chased down by nobles, which was an interesting story, and I got a bit angry at it because I was trying to make them move as quickly as possible before my lines fell, because as you can see my units are being beaten, and when I zoomed in the cavalry was walking and stuff like that, and I was like, what are you doing? You need to be running, and I kind of got a bit frustrated, etc. But eventually they got there anyway. I did lose a few men in the process, but I thought I can catch his longbow hunters here off of guard, sorry, Celtic hunters even, not longbow hunters, what have I been saying all this time, and try and get the jump on them, which I did with my cavalry force, which meant, well, effectively I'd wiped out his ranged units again, so he had no ranged advantage. So I tried to do that on my cavalry, along with trying to bring my other two groups of cavalry after I'd finished with the archers back around to smash into the back of the Oathsworn lines, because that's the only way that I was going to win. Now I tried to treat it like phalanx, for instance, and that is to strike them from the back is a very effective way in killing them, compared to any other method. Just charging men at the pike wall isn't going to do anything effective. So I thought I had to get behind them and do some damage. Now at this point my ally came in with a group of shot cavalry and just smashed the back of the Oathsworn, because he saw that I was struggling generally, and then I got the remainder of my cavalry force and smashed into the back of them. Now at this point the Averni Oathsworn were all wavering, because they'd pretty much been broken morale wise, and I had a distinct advantage. But the Spartans chased back and came over to my side and smashed a whole spear infantry unit into the back of my cavalry. So at this point I knew, although at this moment in time I had 4 groups of cavalry left, I wasn't going to have 4 groups of cavalry left when this was all over. And I knew I'd pretty much lose all my cavalry, but I kept them in the fight anyway, trying to just wipe out as many Oathsworn as humanly possible during the battle. But at this point, my strongest area of my army was still my Cretan archers. Now, although on the other side of the battlefield most of my allies' Cretan archers were wiped out, we still had the distinct advantage. 4 groups of Cretan archers can do a lot of damage to units before they even get into melee combat, so we were trying to use that to our advantage as much as possible here. But as you can see, the battle here is going back and forth. We're not sure who's winning, who's going to win, because although we have more flags in the kind of mess, he has better units in there, and they're taking out our cavalry like it's no man's business. And when we thought there's a group of Oathsworn and Spear Nobles versus a few groups of Peltas, the way that the engagement before went, we were a bit sceptical of whether or not we were actually going to win this. But alas, the mercenary Cretan archers took a few pot shots at the Averni in the back and killed quite a few actually while they were fighting, and the Peltas managed to somehow quickly wrap the battle up, although we did lose one group of my Peltas there pretty much completely. But that was all thanks again to another move by his cavalry, so my ally really was trying to help me with the Oathsworn, because my ally did realise that the Oathsworn were owning Peltas generally, and that it was quite important that we took out the Oathsworn more than anything, because they were one of the main units of concern during the battle. But at this moment in time, we'd wrapped up the battle, and we'd actually killed every single unit of Oathsworn, so we were kind of sat there going, yes, finally, we've got the distinct advantage in the battle here. As you can see, I put my Cretan archers to work straight away on the Spartan Hiller archers that he had, and they did not stand a chance. They were all just pretty much wiped out, and they went down from 90 down to around 24 men within 2 volleys. So at this moment in time, the Spartans tried to regroup here after mopping up one of my allies' units. So let's do a unit count of what we actually had left. At this point, we had 2 groups of Peltas on my side, 2 groups of Peltas on my allies' side. He had 1 group of badly hurt, ungeneraled general units cav, so his general had died, but nonetheless, it's still a general unit of cav. So we had shot cavalry there to help out as well. And he had 1 group of mercenary Cretan archers. Now at this point here, he was trying to charge our Cretan archers while they were unprotected with a cavalry unit. Now my ally sacrificed his Cretan archers to make sure that mine could get away, because mine were much more effective and they were pretty much nearly all had full health on them, so we didn't want to lose them because they were our main advantage over what was left of the Spartan army. So as you can see at this point, melee wise we were completely outnumbered, for melee units, but my Cretan archers really were the strongest units generally of my army from the beginning, I think, generally. So at this point we didn't not sure how it would go, so we formed up our soldiers in, well, another formation really, and kind of formed a new mini battle in the middle of the battlefield. So this is one of those moments where at the moment we thought we were going to win, or had a good chance of winning, but he did have a lot of units and a lot of varied types of units. Now, I said before in my most previous videos that sometimes it's not the amount of units you have, sometimes it's actually the variation of units and how you can use those in the battle that really wins the battle for you. And that was this situation generally here in this battle, is that he had a lot more varied types of units, a lot more melee, a few ranged, and a cav unit. But so did we, so we were quite evenly matched and I felt pretty confident. Upon seeing the fact that he had a 120 out of 120 man group of Royal Spartans there, I put my mercenary Cretan archers, all of them in fact, onto the task of whittling down that number as much as possible before they got into combat, because none of my melee units actually had much over half manpower. And against a whole group of Royal Spartans they wouldn't have really done much, so here we go, this is where the battle began really. So mercenary Cretan archers, we kept them back as much as possible and tried to provide fire support pretty much for the front lines. Now that group of mercenary Cretan archers ran out of ammo, so they just put them to work on the general unit, see if we can get rid of his general. I think at that time his general was already dead, but I didn't pay attention, so I didn't know, so I was just trying to charge everything. His general unit was quickly broken, and his melee lines actually didn't last very long at all. And even here, against the whole group of Royal Spartans, my peltasts were actually going to work, and they were actually doing really well. So I flanked around the back with mercenary Cretan archers. I honestly, at that moment in time, thought that that was my peltasts group. Upon realising I'd just charged mercenary Cretan archers, they still ran away though, and we pretty much caused a mass rout. And that's pretty much how the battle ended, guys. So kind of went back and forth throughout the whole battle. I wasn't sure who's going to win. Ranged units can be countered quite easily by cavalry, etc. So we really weren't sure. But nonetheless, I hope you guys enjoyed the battle, and I'll speak to you guys in a bit. Thanks for watching, guys.